All right, joining us now on the Ben and Skin Show is the owner and GM of the Dallas Cowboys, the great Jerry Jones. How are you this morning, Mr.
Hey,
Jones?
man, I'm doing great and excited about this weekend.
Yes, sir, we are as well. Now, I would think since you are one of the greatest marketers to ever walk on our earth, that you might enjoy a little trash talk between teams. And Josh Norman said recently he was not really giving Dak a lot of love. He said you stand back there in the pocket all day, you go through your first, second, and third reads, come back to your first one, okay, cool, anybody can do that. You could throw the ball if that's the case. So Josh Norman not ready to give Dak a lot of love for that week one, giving all the credit to the offensive line. What do you think about that, Jerry?
Well, first of all, Dak would be the first, me the second, to give our offensive line a lot of the credit. It does help to be able to have your progression and the time to have it. On the other hand, what I like about Dak is that he is doing that. That's really a given that he's going to go through the progression. He's got confidence in his group. But even when it breaks down, and this is the key, when it does break down, when it's not exactly the same thing that you might have drawn up in the pocket, Dak can still make the play. And I would say to anybody, that's the difference.
You know, and as we've seen the progression here, year 4, really settling into things, but when did you guys kind of get that sense that Dak was the guy that could make, lemonade out of lemon, so to speak, when those things broke down? Was that something you guys thought he could do coming out of college, or did it kind of surprise you once you had him in the team?
You know, player evaluation has a way of, as it evolves, as it goes, and then you see it, it makes you articulate and think about things that you saw 2 years earlier, and you confuse what you're just seeing with what you thought you saw 2 years earlier. My point is that, no, anybody that tells you they saw Dak doing this coming out of college doesn't have their memory on right. And he has evolved. He's doing things out there right now that is rewarding to everybody involved, but that's a progression. He's evolved, and that's what you hope for. But what you did see was his ability to focus on getting better, his ability to carry from the classroom to the field, practice field, what he basically wanted to and understood in the classroom. And then you just see he's taking the ball where it's supposed to go, relatively speaking, now, and that alone will make an improvement.
So there's no doubt in anyone's mind you guys have been in love with Dak for a long time, and you want him to be here for a long, long time. And I know you're not coming on our show to get into any of the specifics of your contract negotiations. You've made that clear. But I do want to ask you on a personal level, how surprised are you that within this negotiation, if Dak's only going to make $2 million this year without a new contract and could stand to make 25, 30, 35 million just in year one, if you guys get that deal done, whatever it is, how surprised are you that he's willing to just kind of bypass an offer that would guarantee him that many millions of dollars in this first year?
Well, Dak's looking at the bigger picture. He, I think, made the phrase, this is generational decision. It is that for him and his family, everybody that he loves or is going to love is going to benefit from coming along at the right time in the NFL. These are great times. You couldn't have hit it better to be a young man with football skills. But again, I want to emphasize Dak takes what's there and he improves on it. He works on it. He's a tremendously hard worker. And if you really look at common ground with the top quarterbacks as they have been in the NFL for generations, they all have a work ethic. They all really are focused, and they're continually trying to get better. And I think Romo might look like that he was a little nonchalant about things, but he wasn't. He was just driven to take each nuance and get better. And so I think that's Dak.
Talking to Jerry Jones here on the Ben and Skin Show, brought to you by Ford, the best in Texas. So one of the things that happens when these quarterbacks grow is they become more involved in the offense and make more decisions at the line of scrimmage, et cetera. You guys have a new offensive coordinator. Everyone's buzzing about him. How involved is Dak in the game plan and how it fits Dak's particular skill set?
Well, so unique to the two of them, Moore and Prescott, is their experience and their background together as players. And if you will, Kellen's experiences as a player in college principally. But he really, we don't want to look over the experience and knowledge he got working with Scott Linehan, both at Detroit and then when he came to Dallas. So that they've been able almost seamlessly, they being Moore and Dak, to have make that a part of their relationship and a part of their makeup. I'm talking about just Kellen's huge, significant background in whether it be the mindset or the mentality of today's offense, today's quarterbacks, and so it was just a real opportunity for the Cowboys and our fans to take advantage of that relationship and how they've come together. And they've developed a way to communicate. Kellen's arguably his best skill is his comfortable way to communicate and articulate to players what his thoughts are regarding offense. And so we're getting to take advantage of that. It's a great team.
Jerry, are analytics influencing play calls this year or more this year? And if so, how has that evolved?
Yeah, I don't know that it is, when you say more this year, I think there's a place for that aspect of just coaching, if you will, analytics. But at the end of the day, you've heard a lot of attention being given to footwork and heard of a lot of attention being given to simple throwing, setting feet and directing feet and ankle eye and those kinds of things. And so, it's just a part of it. At the end of the day, the makeup of an individual, when it's bearing down on him and it's loud and he can't see very well, you look at those guys are standing up, and believe it or not, even if you're Dak, it's hard to see. Aikman told me one time, he said, it's difficult seeing out there. And there Aikman was pushing 6'4". So the bottom line is how someone reacts when the heat's on and it's not like it looks sometimes in practice, or it might be drawn up on the chalkboard. All of that is in the makeup of the quarterback, and we've got one with makeup in Dak Prescott.
Absolutely, and it seems like you got the right offensive coordinator to go with him. A lot of people are excited about this, and Ben and I were lucky enough to interview Dirk Nowitzki earlier this week, and he talked about hanging out with you in the owner's box this weekend and said you were pretty pumped up about what Kellen was doing.
Yeah, well, Dirk, of course, is such a really, I'm going to say treasure. I'm going to go that far. He is a treasure. He's been the face of competing. He's certainly, you've watched him become better right before your eyes, take his skills, take his talent, take his, if you will, his stature, and really be a big influencer with sports. And so it was great to see him, great to have him involved, great to have him as a fan.
Talking to Jerry Jones, the owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, brought to you by Ford, the best in Texas. And Jerry, I love talking to you about sales and marketing and those types of things. You've done amazing things with the Dallas Cowboys, obviously, and the NFL in general. And I love listening to you tell stories about your dad and the influence that he had on you with his store and his business, the way he ran it. I want to ask you a question. Over the years, you've probably interviewed several different salespeople. How can you tell if a salesperson's going to be good or if they're not going to be good?
I will tell you, I think it's very similar to the discussion we're having as to quarterbacks. they just seem to always be trying to come up with a way to gain an edge. You can say get better. One of the most important in my life, one of the greatest salespeople I've ever been around is a guy named George Hayes. And George was with us in the early years when we first bought the Cowboys. But George had a series of life's training experience in marketing. But George would, just to get his mind right, would come in and sit down early every day and take a book of something, a magazine, a phone book, and just make 20 cold calls. Had never met them, didn't have any suggestion that they might be interested in what we're doing. And he would just make those cold calls. More often than not, he'd get 20 no's. But he made those calls. It would get his mind right, and it would get his temperament right, because of you have to have a thick skin, and you have to be able to be told no a lot. And I always admired that about his, if you will, just his toughness. And so I think that in marketing and sales, I think there's a mental toughness that is required. And you see the same thing, continually looking for ways to be tough. I know that you've heard me say, but the people I know that work at it and try to get better at it, they're usually driving along in a car and they're listening to tapes, or they're listening to things to motivate them rather than the music. And they may be listening to a great story or a great example of how someone got knocked down and got up. We just lost someone 2 days ago that was one of the greatest I've ever met at getting knocked down and getting back up. Consequently, Boone Pickens, after he became 70, had his finest hour and had some of his finest, the finest years in terms of being successful in business. Yet when he was like 72, when a lot of people had their best years behind them or certainly in them, he overcame depression that he'd have to lift his leg up out of the bed to put it on the floor. He was so depressed and couldn't get up in the morning that things were going the wrong way. And then he turned around at 70-something years old and made $5 billion. And he did it through hard work.
Wow, that is really, really cool perspective. Okay, Jerry, I want to get your thoughts on the big Tank Lawrence hullabaloo at the beginning of the week when he walked past the young fan.
Well, I think this, and you're cutting out, but I hope you can hear me good.
Yes,
but that's kind of ironic, because we don't have anybody that does a better job with children and gives back more than Tank. And he's not only a great dad, but he's highly sensitive to people. And he's continually going out of his way, and he'll sign autograph for hours after practice, a hard practice. So what comes to my mind when I see that is, how can you I do understand how an instant can be made to make you look different than you really are. But Tank's, he understands to give back to these kids and these fans as well as anybody I've ever been around.
Okay, we're back. Mr. Jones, do you still have us?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Thank you for sticking with us here.
Amazing patience.
Yeah, thank you for your patience, sir. We greatly appreciate that. I love visiting with you about family. I love how tight-knit the Jones family is. And I know you're proud of all your kids. They're amazing, Charlotte, Jerry Jr., and Stephen. I just want to ask you specifically about Stephen, because we probably deal with Stephen more than any of them. When you look at Stephen and his incredible accomplishments, what makes you the most proud of Stephen?
Well, I think I've seen him have to suck it up, so to speak. And that has always been the proudest time at any level. I thought when he was really young, I would travel a lot, and I would come back and want to help coach his teams or just be involved. And I thought I was doing that for him. and you've heard me say many times, turned out the one that got the most out of it was me.
Yep.
But Stephen, when he went to school, to really, and I don't want to give too much credit to this, but Stephen took the toughest thing that you could possibly take, chemical engineering, just because I asked him to, because I really wanted him to go to possibly a different road and go to maybe a different type of education. But anyway, he went to school, and he took chemical engineering. And one day I walked in, and it was about 3 or 4 years into the Cowboys, and, man, he was grinding away with a contract, and he was working with an agent. And I smiled at him, and I said, boy, this chemical engineering degree is really kicking in working with that dumbass agent, isn't it?
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Jerry, please don't ever change, and please don't ever stop doing these call-ins. You talk about Dirk being a treasure. Well, we agree with you on that, but we also think you're a treasure as well, sir. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
I guess I better clear this up. They're not all completely out to lunch.
No. You should have left it at the mic drop, Jerry. That was perfect.
No,
I think that's
Eugene Parker, who's not with us anymore, was as top individual as is in any profession in this United States. So there's one or two that can get in out of the rain.
Hey, Jerry, thank you so much. Good luck with Washington this week.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, there he goes, the great Jerry Jones.
so awesome.